In our last episode, we sailed ourselves across the Sea of Cortez to make a quick border run, check in with family, and bring ourselves back some needed parts and supplies. This time around, we take care of a quick few bits of maintenance and then head back across the Sea of Cortez to explore parts unknown. While we were back in the States, checking in with family for a few days, our little floating home was tucked back in the corner of San Carlos, put away safe and sound in the marina. But now that we were back, it was time to get to work so we could get out of here. Because from here north, everything in the sea would be new to us, and we love seeing new places. All right, we made it back. That was a whole lot of driving for a quick trip to the States. But we saw some family, we stocked up with a whole bunch of snacks and treats, and we filled up our car and smuggled in a whole bunch of boat parts, which is kind of crucial. This boat's been falling apart around us pretty much all season. So we brought back some stuff that'll hopefully get us by until we can't stand the heat any longer. But I can tell you right now, it got really hot in just the few days we were gone. Whew, hot and sweaty. But probably the most important thing we brought back was this guy right here. If you've been watching these episodes for a little bit, then you probably know our windlass gave us some grief. Well, starting a couple of months ago, and really for the last couple of months, it's been working intermittently. We've always been able to get the anchor up with a little bit of effort, but it's just not been working. I've taken it apart 3 different times trying to fix it, and it all seems fine. The only thing I can think of that's wrong with it is this solenoid. So we smuggled one in. Hopefully this will do the trick. Hola, ¿cómo está? Bien, gracias. As quick and easy as the old solenoid came out of the windlass, well, that's where the quick and easy ended. Because one of these things is not quite like the other. Since the new solenoid was quite a bit bigger than the old one and didn't fit in the windlass, the old solenoid got cleaned up again and shoved back in the hole. And we hoped that this thing would just carry us through the rest of the season. Bad news, this thing, it doesn't fit. It's pretty disappointing, really. The product description from the Quick, that's these guys, Quick manufacturer, says this fits in every one of their windlasses from 300 watts to 2500 watts, but I can guarantee you it doesn't fit in there. So, this is gonna go back when we go to the States, and we'll try again, see if we can find something else. But we got a bunch of other stuff that should be a bit easier and more productive. Got new sheet blocks, because the old ones, they've got about 35,000 miles on them, and they're shot. The bearings don't really slide anymore, and it's amazing how much a little friction on your sheets makes it hard to crank in the sails. They jam and stick, and so got new sheet blocks. We got new fans. Fans down here are crucial. You can't survive without them. So putting in some new fans, and we also got some new cockpit speakers, among other things. So hopefully some of these other little projects, they'll go quick and easy, then we can get out of here and get back to cruising. And the other good news, we got Swedish fish. These things are going fast. I don't know that they're gonna last one more day, but they're good. With some Swedish fish down the hatch and powering us up, we took care of a few little nagging projects that have popped up throughout the season.
We've got 8 fans on this boat, all strategically placed, because without fans in the tropics or even in the desert area of Mexico, survival just wouldn't happen. So these things, they last quite a while, but not forever. This one in particular, this was in our forward cabin, one of the 2 we have in the forward cabin. I think we put this in maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Contacts on this thing, you can clean them up for a while and that'll extend the life, but at some point there's just no contacts left. So a new fan's going in. 'Cause it's hot! All right, today was a pretty productive day, even though the windlass thing didn't quite work out. But we got a lot of stuff done. A bunch of little things that needed to happen, and one big thing. In nearly 25 years of living on a boat, consistently my least favorite job is changing head hoses. You gotta do it now and then, there's no way around it, but it's a crappy job. That's why I didn't show you any of it, but pun intended. But thanks to this stuff, it went surprisingly well. So much so that I'm even gonna tell you about it. This is a butyl-based sanitation hose. It's super flexy, so going in and around bulkheads, piece of cake. Normally this job is pretty miserable. It's a lot of cursing, a lot of scrapes and cuts, and one unhappy guy. But this stuff made it a piece of cake. So I'm gonna put a link down in the video description. You can check it out if you want more info. It costs a couple bucks more a foot, but totally worth it. Made a crappy job, not so crappy. So that's about it. I think we're getting out of here tomorrow and we're gonna head back across the sea and get more exploring of the Baja. And that'll kind of be it for here.
So the next morning, we left San Carlos behind and were quickly met with a pretty steep, uncomfortable chop that was, of course, nowhere to be seen in the forecast. And while we were bouncing around, Brenda was gonna try to catch us some fish.
Yeah, fishy, fishy.
Yep. It's Dorado season.
Well, there goes San Carlos behind us. We just left a couple of hours ago and it was a pretty rowdy start. It's smoothing out now, which is good, because it would be a long crossing if it kept up like that. But we did get a whole lot of stuff done there. Made 2 border crossings, saw a new baby in the family, and smuggled in a bunch of stuff. Treats and boat parts, both important things. Now we're crossing the sea again, so this will be the 2nd crossing of the sea in a little over a week. Then we'll get back to cruising and more exploration in places we haven't been yet, so that's pretty exciting. But for now, we got about a day to go. We should get across to a little place called San Francisco in, well, sometime tomorrow. Brenda's working on some fishing. It's Dorado season, so hopefully catch something. And Brenda's got a squirt gun.
Like this? How's that?
Kind of nice. It's the only form of air conditioning we've got on this boat. If you come to Mexico, get a whole bunch of spray bottles. You can circulate them through the fridge, so you always got a cold one. So funny.
Stuck at sea for a long time. I gotta entertain myself somehow.
And just when things started to get really bouncy and even more uncomfortable, that's when we got some visitors. And to this day, I still haven't been able to figure out if those visitors actually smooth out the ride or just help you forget how uncomfortable you are. Still, after all these years of sailing and all these encounters with dolphins and sea turtles and whales, I can tell you one thing for certain. It just never gets old.
Well, up here in the Sea of Cortez, we see dolphins pretty much daily. If we don't, we think there's something wrong. But usually those little dolphin encounters, they're a few minutes, 10 minutes maybe tops. But these guys have been hanging around for like an hour. That's pretty cool. But I think our sailing may be coming to an end fairly soon. We've still got enough breeze to move, but there's a pretty steep chop that there's just not enough breeze to keep us powered up through the chop. So the sails are flogging around, everything's slamming back and forth. Might have to fire up the motor, which is sort of depressing, given that we got enough wind to actually move.
But even as a guy who would rather ghost along at 2 knots than listen to the engine, sometimes there's only so much you can take. So rather than keep bouncing around, slamming back and forth, and listening to all the creaks and groans, it was time.
Well, unfortunately that was it. Couldn't take any more. So fired up the motor. And we'll see how this goes. Hopefully this won't be an all-night motor fest, but you never know. The forecast showed that we'd be able to sail all the way across, but really there's just not enough wind to power through this swell. So, got the motor, but the motion, it's not been comfortable at all. So Brenda's actually seasick and down for the count. I don't know if we'll see her till tomorrow, we'll see. But that's it, it's a motor fest for now.
But luckily, that motor fest only lasted about an hour, because a couple of more knots of breeze filled in, and we were back to sailing.
Well, we're back to sailing. That's good news. Doing about 4.5 knots, which isn't bad. We're not going overly fast, but it's a lot better than listening to the engine. And the sea state's calmed down a little bit. That's 2 good things, and while I was pulling sails back out, a pod of whales went by. Can't beat it. Stuff you see out here. Hopefully this continues, because it'll be a lot nicer sailing than motoring, and then I'll have a little easier time sleeping at night. That's it. Back to sailing. That was quite a sunset. We've got, well, a long ways to go. So, hopefully this keeps up, but it's starting to peter out again. I think this may be a motor fest kind of night. But the forecast really actually calls for quite a bit of breeze, filling in about 2 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully it's not too much. We'll see what happens, but I don't know. It's not, we haven't had the best luck with forecasts lately. That's all I'm going to say. It's been pretty far off the mark quite a bit at the time. But not much we can do about that. We'll see what happens. See you later.
And after what would turn out to be a really rough night with us reefed down and pounding and bashing our way all the way across the sea, the next morning, just as the sun was coming up, the Baja was coming into full view.
Well, we made it back to the Baja, and that was a rough night. Right after the sun went down, we got about 25 to 30 knots on the nose for the entire night until about 5 this morning, right before the sun came up. It completely died. Now it's flat, calm, and glassy, which is kind of weird, really. Just like that, flipped like a switch. But I gotta say, I love the Baja. It's gorgeous. You can't beat the scenery. It's nice to be back. But also, it's amazing what a difference it is over here. When we left San Carlos, it was pushing 90 degrees and about 80% humidity. And we even talked about stopping cruising for the season there because it was getting really uncomfortable. Just hot and muggy and sticky. Not all that great. But over here, it's totally different. I got a jacket on. It's about 70 degrees. The water temperature here is in the mid 70s versus 90, which it was over there. So, it's back to pleasant. Kind of excited to be back. But we still got about an hour and a half to go, and then we'll be anchored, and then we're going to bed. That was a rough night. See you later.
But sleeping was gonna have to wait, because when we pulled into San Francisquito, good old Sebastian was high and dry. But that's a story for next time.